Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about the complex litigation standards of the federal and state courts. Let's discuss the heightened pleading standards when bringing cases against the government. The heightened pleading standards under the Constitution. You've got this standard of pleading when you're alleging claims against government agents like planning and zoning boards or the sheriff's department or the mayor, or if you're suing a congressman or a senator, or if you're suing a government agency like in a Bivens action, you're suing the FBI for violating your constitutional rights, or you're suing the EPA for condemning property that belongs to you or taking it for an environmental project. You have to plead to these very high standards of pleading. In other words, you have to essentially have all the facts, the names and the dates of all the people that have deprived you of your rights, and you have to plead it in such a fashion that basically you have to prove the law and the facts of your case up front at the pleading stage, or they just chuck you out of court. If you don't meet the heightened pleading standards to the satisfaction of like Brett Kavanaugh, you're thrown out of court. So we've got these allegations of sexual malfeasance. We've got sexual assaults and people sticking their penises in little girls' faces and making them touch them, and they're being groped and shoved down on beds and hands put over people's mouths. There's all kinds of police stations, sheriff's offices all over the United States where certain people can go down and just say whatever they want to say, make up a story with no evidence, no proof, no facts at all except their say-so, and get people thrown in jail. Happens every day in America. But you notice that the Supreme Court of the United States isn't discussing any of that. They don't want to talk about the heightened pleading standards. They do not want the American people to understand what the heightened pleading standards are and how those heightened pleading standards have completely destroyed Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 8. Now, without going into great detail, you can look up the Federal Rule of Civil Procedure 8 on your own on the internet. It's very easy to look it up. It's the pleading standards that existed in this country for over 100 years and how you brought a case against government agents for violation like of your civil rights. All you had to do is give them a plain and simple generalized statement of the basis of your claim, and you were off and running. You were doing discovery. You were finding out who had what evidence. You were getting police records and governmental files to support and prove your case. Well, they've done away with all of that. They've created the heightened pleading standards under Imbler versus Packman and its progeny. The cases following Imbler versus Packman have taken the pleading standards in the courts of the United States against government agents and any kind of government agency and made it nearly, if not impossible, to win a civil rights case. In other words, with the heightened pleading standards, they've literally taken away your constitutional rights. Your constitutional rights have become a joke. Like the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, your 14th Amendment rights. They're attacking your Second Amendment right to keep and bear. ARMS. It's 4 letters, folks. A second grade student, a second grade child understands ARMS. Arms. Doesn't say gun. It doesn't say 5-shot, single action hunting rifles or bolt action rifle. It doesn't say rifle. It doesn't say pistol, the right to keep and bear a pistol, or it doesn't say a right to keep and bear a musket. It says the right to keep and bear ARMS. The courts and the government of the United States are stripping away systematically your liberties and freedoms under the Constitution of the United States. And the proof of it is, here's the proof. Why aren't the Democrats in this judiciary hearing into the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh, why aren't we explaining to the American people the heightened pleading standards? Why are they not applying the heightened pleading standards to Brett Kavanaugh's accusers? Would that cause a discussion of the heightened pleading standards and just how impossible it is to bring a case against a government official? And the answer is, well, of course it would. They're totally ignoring it. And something else they're totally and completely ignoring is the fact that 99% of all the cases that go to the Supreme Court are a result of perceived or actual injustices and not getting your equal protection and not getting your due process of law in the district courts and in the appellate courts. So you take an appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court to argue the fact that you've been stripped of your constitutional rights, and 99% of all the cases that go up to the United States Supreme Court simply get put in the dumpster. There is no justice for 99% of the people that go to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, we got trillions of dollars for military budgets, and we've got trillions of dollars to bail out the big banks and bail out all the big, crooked government slobs and all the crooked government politicians. We got plenty of money to bail them out, but we've got limited resources for our most sacred rights under the laws of the United States. We don't have the money for justice in the courts. Now somebody's running a con on 325 million people. Now it's hard for me to get this right because I've got my screen reversed. It just drives me nuts. But trust me, I understand the rules of court. I get it. And they're not talking about it. They don't want these discussions in front of the American people because the American people would wake up and realize that the Supreme Court's a joke. The federal appellate courts are a farce, and the federal district courts are just an absolute con job because they've created what's known as the heightened pleading standards. And you can look them up on the internet. They're not a secret. They're not a conspiracy theory. They're a damned reality. Ladies and gentlemen, the United States Constitution has no penalties and no teeth. There is no bite to constitutional violations by government agents. They've taken all the bite out of it. They've created a get-out-of-jail-free card for most government agencies and most government officials. In other words, get yourself a telephone book, look in the yellow pages, and see how many constitutional rights lawyers you can find in the yellow pages. See how many lawyers in the yellow pages, advertise their firms as these big constitutional warriors that will take your case on contingency. Now, it's full of, we'll take your car accident and your workman's compensation claim. They love to take Social Security claims. A lot of them are into, defending you on drug charges and trying to keep you out of trouble with family services and child protective services and family courts. And there's so many of them practice bankruptcy law, it's not even funny. Because you got to pay your bankruptcy lawyer. You can't get out of paying your bankruptcy lawyer. You can't file bankruptcy for legal fees to a bankruptcy lawyer. They got that one all sewed up. But when you try to find a lawyer that will defend your constitutional rights, good luck. Because the lawyers The bar associations, the American Bar Association, knows damn well about the heightened pleading standards that have been created to allow people like Hillary Clinton to get off scot-free, to let Barack Obama do whatever Barack Obama wants with no consequences. Same with Bill Clinton, same with George Bush Jr., same with George Bush Sr., and same with Donald Trump. The heightened pleading standards. Educate yourself a little bit and you'll discover that your constitutional rights are just about worthless. And they're not talking about that in the Kavanaugh confirmation hearings. You haven't heard a single word whispered about the heightened pleading standards. Because if they were to apply the heightened pleading standards in this Kavanaugh confirmation hearing, his accusers would be shut down before they even got started. And why aren't the Democrats talking about this? Because they do not want the American people to understand that you have been reduced to a bunch of serfs. You're serfs. You're indentured servants. You're sharecroppers, taxpayers. You are on the hook for all this government debt. You're on the hook for all the government budgets. You're nothing more than a battery. Just like Morpheus tells Neo in The Matrix. They've reduced you to a battery. They're parasites. And there's a lot of people that do not like what I've got to say because they know doggone well that I know doggone what I'm talking about here. They know I'm correct. So ladies and gentlemen, wake up! Wake up, America, and realize that your government is not your friend. Your government is using you in a human farming operation where you pick up the tab. You pay the bill. That's all you are. You've been reduced to a bunch of serfs and complete with fiat legal tender shin plaster. You don't think I understand the heightened pleading standards? Take some time to study fiat money, shin plaster, and what's called legal tender. In fact, read the legal tender cases and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. And in final summation and final comment, the director of the Office of Management and Budget for 2 U.S. presidents, Donald Stockman, he called it phony, baloney, money. Donald Stockman, phony, baloney, money. David Stockman, excuse me, not Donald, David. That's what it is, folks. You've been bamboozled. You've been bamboozled and shanghaied. Your constitutional republic, your liberty, and your freedom is a myth. You've been turned into a serf by an out-of-control, failed bureaucracy, not just in Washington, D.C., but all over the United States. You're literally living in an open-air prison because they've taken away your constitutional rights under the heightened pleading standards. Study them and see how many cases get routinely thrown out without allowing any discovery, without allowing so much as a motion hearing. You're immediately dismissed from the courts. You go up to the appellate court, they rubber stamp them. They rubber stamp these cases involving the heightened pleading standards. And then when you go to the United States Supreme Court, 99% plus are just thrown in the dumpster. So that's the state of America this morning, folks. I didn't want to tell you, but the United States Slavery Incorporated, that's a reality. The United States, well, let's see, Slavery Incorporated, there it is, right there. Wake up, America. Wake up. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, hasta la vista, God bless, and you betcha, we're coming back.